All right, welcome back, Roster Wars, for the United Nations Rookie Summit Part 2. This week, we are going to be jumping in to the wide receivers. A nice, exciting class coming in here. Maybe not quite as talented as previous years, but we can get into that. I guess it's subject to your opinion, but it seems to be there's a good top three, and then there's a clear jump down into the second tier there. So we have 5 wide receivers we are going to be discussing today. But before we get into it, welcome in Ross. Welcome in Tyler. Thanks for joining. Let's kick it off, guys. You excited to talk these wide receivers?
So yeah, it's
Sure
one of my
thing.
favorite positions to do. Yeah,
What do you think about this class compared to the past few years?
yeah. It's like it's not every prospect seems to have like one glaring weakness. So I don't think there's any well-rounded sort of elite tier prospects. So thinking about last year, there was maybe like what 4 or 5 that you say were really good and were going to
Mm-hmm.
come into the NFL and perform. I think receivers seem to be great every year. Like it's just a sort of constant stream from college, but everyone in this class is like a little bit short or lacking a bit of speed or whatever. So yeah, good, but not amazing, not great.
Yeah. I agree. A lot smaller of a class. I feel like when I was
Yeah,
going through it, I feel like a lot of these guys profile more for like a slot role. Last year, we were blessed with the likes of like Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, Chris Olave, Drake London, a little bit more like on the outside receiver kind of role. And even like, and with every wide receiver class and every prospect, you're always going to be nitpicking at some. Like, even when Jamar Chase was
yeah,
coming out, we're like, oh, well, he missed the whole year. Is he a one hit wonder? And then, like, sure enough, he's a can't miss prospect when it all is said and done. So, I think there's a couple of guys I wouldn't quite put him in that tier, but there's some guys that'll definitely intrigue me and everybody else looking at this rookie class. What do you think, Tyler?
Well, first, don't wide receivers have like the highest fail rate amongst first round picks in the NFL? Like, you know, you know what I mean? I know it's gotten a little better over the years, but I remember like 6 or 7 years ago, there was like something about only like 20% of first round picks actually have play like 5 years or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I can't remember exactly. It was like 5, 6 years ago, but their wide receivers are hard to really pick how they're gonna do in the NFL, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know. You don't know. Like
Yeah.
they could
And
be,
I think it's
yeah,
like that with a lot of positions too. I mean, even if you're looking at quarterback, like it's a 50-50 boomer bust. Running backs, obviously, like I think it'd be a little bit more high because there's not a lot of for running backs taken in the first round of the NFL draft, and then defense all the way down. I think it's pretty 50-50. So there's a couple of traits that I like in some of my receivers. I think that has helped me in the past dictate whether or not they're going to be successful. And I think a lot of it has to do not just with like tape is obviously the most important thing, but it's those interviews when they talk to teams and it's things that we're not privy to, like how I mentioned in the quarterback segment last week, those are the things that I think really indicate whether somebody's going to be a hit or a miss. And that's
right.
when you'll see guys, every year, like even like just I can't think of a wide receiver example, but like a Malik Willis type, like everybody was clamoring for him. The tape, obviously there was some issues and everybody said he was such a nice guy, but then why does he fall to the third round? So there's just a lot of things, a lot of conversations behind the scenes that fans like us and media just aren't privy to that can cause a guy to rise or fall. It happens every single year. And it's definitely going to happen this year. We're going to be right about some guys and wrong about some others. But I think there's a clear top 3 here. We'll get into it first with our first guy on the docket. It's going to be Quentin Johnston from TCU. He's 21 years old. He's a junior, 6'3", 208 pounds. Uh, Really good athlete. He was at the combine, didn't do a whole lot other than measurements. Didn't run the 40, didn't do like the 3 cone or shuttle, but he did jump. He had a 40.5-inch vertical and 11-foot 2-inch broad jump. So that's some elite numbers right there from an athleticism standpoint in terms of like that kind of measures his explosion. But there's this guy that I follow on Twitter. His name is Kent Lee Platty. And if you don't know who he is, I strongly suggest that you do. But I've been following this guy for years. I think he started off just working like with the Lions, but now he's on a national landscape. And his RAS score, RAS, which stands for Relative Athletic Score, is a really good indicator on just how good of an athlete the prospect is. And you can compare that back from data like 20 years ago. So, like Calvin Johnson, for example, he scored like a 10 RAS because he's just a freak athlete. He's got the height, he's got the weight, speed, explosion, agility, he's got everything. And there were some guys who were kind of pushing Calvin, like Anthony Richardson, for example. He had like a 10.0 RAS score. And when it comes to quarterbacks, that's not quite as of a good indicator pointing to their success. But like at position groups like wide receiver, tight end, defense, and whatnot, I think that is a very good indicator on how good of an athlete you're getting on the team. Now you'll get like a guy like Chris Conley out of Georgia from a couple of years ago, went to the Chiefs, who was a freak athlete, but obviously didn't do anything in the NFL. So it's not the best indicator of NFL success, but at least gives you an idea what their athleticism is. So he does not have a complete score just yet, but there's a couple of guys that I'll get into and I'll kind of go over their RAS scores. But Quentin Johnson had a great year in 2022. He had 60 catches for 1,069 yards and 6 touchdowns. 2021, not quite as good, 33 receptions for 612 yards and 6 touchdowns. And obviously, Quentin Johnson was tearing it up in the playoffs as well, college football playoffs this past year against Michigan, had like a crazy 70-something yard touchdown out in the flats, really showed off his run after catch abilities. So I like him a lot coming in as a prospect, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys. What do you think about Quentin Johnson?
Yeah,
My God.
I'm maybe a bit lower on Quentin Johnson than a lot of guys. He's got the traits, so I think he's more a little bit more of a projection than I normally like. But he's got the traits, like you said, he's big and he's fast. And there's not many receivers in this class that are big, let alone big and fast. And his production is there when you look at the underlying numbers, but you mentioned sort of the counting stats. So he's not got a lot of receptions and yards that you'd expect out of like a top half of the first round receiver. And that's just a product of the offense that he was on. So he's not had the same opportunities as someone like Jordan Addison, who I'm sure we're going to talk about next. Um, but like the underlying numbers there, like yards per route run. So when he does go out into a route, he is getting the ball and he is really productive. Um, I don't think he's a natural receiver. Like I don't think he's got the best ball skills. And when you're a bigger guy and you might be in more contested catch situations, I think that's maybe a bit more important to him than someone else who's run underneath. Um, so yeah, I'm struggling a bit with where he's going to fit in the NFL. I think if he can project and he can become more of a sort of improve his hands a bit more, and he can continue to get separation. So that's a big thing when you think about receivers is getting separation. And if he can prove that in the NFL, he can do that. Then I'm sure he'll be a success with the sort of the physical traits that he has.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Tyler?
I really like the film I watched on him. He's he uses his body positioning very well. He uses his size. He's got strong hands. He can go up. Like he could be a really good red zone threat as he goes up and gets the ball in traffic. He's got like just the control of his body to be able to twist and stuff. Like a lot of the highlights you watch, he catches the ball and immediately it's like he twists to the right, or he just has the awareness that somebody's about to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see him just like spin off and go one way or go the other way. The only thing I have about him that I'm a little concerned about is he going to playing like that in the NFL? Is he going to hold up injury wise? Because he's around 200 pounds, but he looks pretty slender, and I know he had some nicks and bang ups in college, so that's just a concern. Is can he stay healthy if he's getting beat on a lot and going into those traffic, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that's a
I've seen a
concern
lot
with
of comps where AJ Green, and he was a guy who got injured a lot himself. So
yeah. Does he have a lot of injury history? Because I didn't see anything about that.
yeah, I don't think he didn't like miss games, but like I was diving into what they're talking about, and there he played hurt, which
Mhm.
is some is a good attribute some say, but
I'd say, yeah.
yeah, he just played through them, which is good, but in college it's one thing. In the NFL, those like nicks and injuries that you're playing through are harder to play through, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
agree. Well, I mean, I would say if anything, he's going to be the most durable out of these receivers we're going to be talking about. He's definitely the biggest one, 208 pounds. I mean, it's not a lot, but a lot of
yeah,
these guys are like 170 pounds, and that was the concern with Devonta Smith coming out is his
well,
frame. I think he was 170 pounds or something
yeah,
coming
and
out.
maybe because he is bigger than the rest for weight and stuff that he can. That's what allows him to play hurt.
Mhm.
The other thing I noticed is all these other guys have like some of the top QBs throwing to them, and he had Max Duggan. So
Mhm.
it's
I mean, Max
kind of
isn't that bad, I mean,
well, he's
took
not
him to the
bad,
college
but
playoffs.
he's not like Stroud. He's not young. He's not any of these top
Mhm.
five guys, right? So
Yeah,
that's
I
that
hear
was
you.
fun, interesting to see. So
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just compile like some strengths and weaknesses for all these players, and his deep ball game, I think, is one of his greater assets because, I mean, you could just turn on the highlight tape and he has blazing speed for one. Like he didn't run the 40, but I'm thinking he'll probably run like a 4.4, and you can see that like in the 70-yard touchdown that he had against Michigan in the college football playoffs. The speed was on full display, and you just turn on the highlight tape and you'll see a couple of throws where he has to slow down, and I wouldn't even say necessarily like, I mean, he's underthrown, but at the same time, he's so fast that, he just gets out ahead of it. So in the NFL, if he's got a quarterback with an arm, I mean, he can just keep on going and run all the way into the end zone. So I definitely see the potential with that. He's clearly an athlete. He's got the size, the speed, the explosiveness, and the yards after catch ability is kind of like it kind of reminded me of CeeDee Lamb when he was coming out of Oklahoma. That ability to catch like an intermediate route, make a couple guys miss, and just take it to the house. And Tyler, you mentioned like as a bigger guy, he does have some of those contested catches where he can just snatch it out of the air with defender right on him. Even if, he doesn't win with his speed, that's just another way that he can win. But you also do see quite a bit of drops from him, which is a concern. He had the 14th most drops in college football. And the other thing is too, he was pretty much used almost like there was definitely some routes that he ran out in the flat, but he was mostly just a deep ball kind of receiver. So a very limited route tree. And it kind of concerns me because you've seen guys come into the NFL with that limited route tree, like Corey Coleman or a Josh Doxson from a couple of years ago. And most recently, like a Denzel Mims. Like Denzel Mims was an athletic freak, tore up the combine, just exploded onto everyone's radar. A lot of people took him in the first round, and look at him now. I mean, he's like the fourth receiver on the Jets. And granted, they have some good guys that they brought in, but he's definitely been very underwhelming, a complete freak in terms of athleticism. And, it just concerns me like he could turn out like one of those guys. So I think that he is definitely in the top three receivers. And I think that he probably has the highest ceiling out of anybody in this class, but I could just as easily see him being a total bust. So, high risk, high reward with Quentin Johnson for me. Landing spot is definitely going to dictate where he lands on my final rankings, but without question, he's in that top three between JSN and Jordan Addison. And I think a lot of people are going to kind of change their opinions on that, but I don't think that anybody belongs in in that third conversation, even if you have them last out of that top tier.
yeah, and
Yeah, I'm glad you
he could be
mentioned
Kevin
the.
White too, though.
Sorry, I'm glad you mentioned the Michigan game because that was where he did pop off, and I think we've seen a lot of other prospects. So I think we're talking about CJ Stroud earlier. It's like when the big games come, that's when they perform. Obviously, the Georgia game was slightly different, but that long touchdown run, it showcased his quickness. So he is long speed fast, but he does have a little bit of quickness in his feet to like shimmy, or he done the high step in to get past the DJ Turner, who
Mhm.
was like ran the fastest combine as well. So that's no mean feat. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. He sort of turned up in the big moments for TCU.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you think he's just kind of like boomer bust, or do you think he's pretty safe? Because I'd say he like is one of the most intriguing guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best in the class. But I could also see him just being a total bust. And there's other guys who I feel much more. They have a much higher floor, a little bit of a safer option.
I honestly think most of these guys are boomer bust.
Well, I mean, everyone's gonna.
Like the guys we're gonna discuss today. I think all of them, well, 4 of them could be like the best, but could be Kevin White's, could be the bust, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
Kevin White's
like you
the
said,
one I
it's
think of
not
as
as
well.
strong as last year. So
No,
Maybe it's just the
definitely not.
dreads, but Kevin White's the one I think of when I think about Quentin Johnson. So that's given me some pause, and I do think he is boomer bust. When I said projection, I didn't necessarily mean projection. I think boomer bust is what I meant. Like he's got all the physical traits, but is it going to work in the NFL or not? So we'll
Hmm.
see.
Okay. Well, let's move it on to Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. He's 21 years old, a junior coming out, measured in at 6'1", 196 pounds. We have a little bit more of a thorough RAS score. It's relative athletic score for those who don't remember, but he got a 9.41 out of 10, which is crazy athletic. He did not run the 40 yet, so we'll be waiting for his pro day numbers there, but he'll probably be running like, higher 4.4s is what I'm estimating. He's not like a total burner, but he's definitely got some speed. Last year he really didn't play much. I think he had 5 catches on the year because he missed the whole season from a hamstring injury. But in 2021, he was one of the most prolific receivers in college football, 95 receptions for 1,606 yards and 9 touchdowns, tore it up in the college football playoffs as well. So what do you guys think about him?
He's my top
go ahead,
wide
Russ.
receiver. He's my wide receiver one. I like everything about him. The only thing he doesn't have is that like long speed, but the position he's going to play in the NFL, he's going to likely be a slot receiver. And he's got like all the elite traits you need for that. So he's got the quickness. He's quick in and out his routes. And his route running is unbelievable. Like he uses his whole body to sort of fake one way and juke the defender the other way. He's a really like sort of smooth, fluid mover. He catches the ball and it's caught, and he's onto the run after the catch. And I think he's a very sort of QB friendly player. So he's quite intelligent. So when he's finding like the sort of soft spots in
Yep.
the zone, and sort of CJ Stroud was always finding him. He's just so I don't know how to explain it. Football IQ, I suppose you would explain it.
You have
And
like
then
the
he gets the
same
ball and
notes
he's
I do.
oh really? Well,
Yeah, I swear.
he pops off the field. That's off the screen. Like he's amazing. And I think a lot of people are comparing him to sort of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
And I think that's mainly because they're going to operate out the slot. They were a slower 40 time, but they're going to have a high impact at the next level. And I
Mhm.
think that's what he's going to do. And just if I could think of like I was doing mock drafts today, and I had the Texans at 2 going CJ Stroud, and then they pick again at 13. And I was thinking to myself, why would they not pair him up with Jackson Smith-Njigba? So I'd love to
Mhm.
see that pairing if with the Texans, just a fucking slot one in there.
Yeah, it's funny you say I'm on Ross St. Brown because that's who I comped him to as well. Kind of St. Brown and Julian Edelman kind of had him in comparison with those guys. But yeah, he's 6'1", right? He's got the size. Um, everything you said, he's also my one. The only thing that scares me is all the reports I'm hearing about how interested the Patriots are in him. And we all know how
They'll
badly
ruin
they
him.
screw up these guys. So I'm just like the other thing in highlights, like I don't want to you know, go off about CJ Stroud again, but it's like a handoff.
Mhm.
Like he's getting open, Stroud's throwing it in stride right into his hands. Like every single catch, I was just like, oh, like it's like a 15-yard handoff right there, you know.
Hmm.
But that's Stroud hitting the money. So yeah, I mean, when I said that 4 of these 5 guys are boom or bust, and Jigba is the only guy that I don't think is bust. But
Hmm.
then again, if he goes to the Patriots, his bust potential goes up. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, I think we're all on the same page. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the wide receiver one in this class, in my opinion, as well. It doesn't matter where he goes. I mean, I definitely want to see where he goes before I feel comfortable saying this, what I'm about to say right now. But if it wasn't for Bijan, I think that he could be the 1-1 in a non-super flex league, PPR league, because it's like right there with him and Jameer Gibbs, in my opinion. But I think that, with running backs, obviously they have a shorter shelf life, and Jackson Smith and Jigba could be a staple in the NFL for 10 years, just a plug and play starter right from the beginning. I think he's NFL ready right now. Like when Ross was talking about what he liked about him, I pretty much have the same stuff as you mentioned, Ross. He's just such a polished receiver. His route running, he's got a great release. He gets in and out of routes really quickly, and that just what creates separation for him. So, quarterbacks are going to zone in on that every time, a lot like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He could play outside and inside, but I do think that he's mostly going to be used in the slot in the NFL. And then, like Ross mentioned again, his football IQ, whether it's just like a slight fake on a break just to create like a little half second of a difference or finding that spot in the zone, he just has a really good feel for the game and he just knows how to get open. And when the other thing too is when a play breaks down, he's really good at, getting to a spot where the quarterback can see him and finding that little open area where he can just quick catch it and get down just to make something out of nothing. And he didn't run the 40, but his RAS for agility, it was elite. I mean, it was in like the 9s for everything, which is just crazy good. I think he had like a sub 4.3 cone, or maybe it was the shuttle. I can't remember which one, but he has a good vertical, a great broad jump, and that hints at his explosiveness. Even if he doesn't have the fastest 40, I mean, if you just have that kind of quick twitch, that in some cases is more important than just top end speed. And the other thing is that he is surprisingly good in contested catch situations. He just finds a way to come down with the football. And, he might not be the biggest or the strongest guy in the world, but he just has really good hands. He tracks the ball in the air well when it's coming to him on those deep routes. So he just does like pretty much everything good. There's not a lot of weaknesses other than like, he didn't run the 40, so we don't know exactly how fast he is, and top end speed isn't necessarily everything, depending on what role you're going to use him for. That might, tamper his ceiling a little bit, bring it down a tad. Like he might not be a Justin Jefferson ever, but it's interesting because everyone was concerned about Justin Jefferson coming out because he played mostly out of the slot in college, and so did Jackson Smith and Jigba. So the question is, can he really play outside and be like that X wide receiver? I don't know, but I don't think that it matters, especially in fantasy football. And the other knock I had on him was just one productive season and he sat out 2022. But then you got Jamar Chase. He did the same thing and he was not a one hit wonder by any means. So you guys are bringing up Julian Edelman and who else? Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really kind of pegged him as like a Keenan Allen because I think Keenan Allen ran like a 4.7 40, but that doesn't matter at all. He's one of the best receivers in fantasy football for the past 10 years. So, I mean, he's a do it all kind of guy. He's my wide receiver one, and I think we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah, I think with Kieran Allen, I think in terms of the 40 time and not needing the speed for the position he plays, I really get that. I think I was thinking of Cooper Kupp as well, who's another guy who ran a slow 40 but works over the middle of the field and doesn't need it. He's obviously slightly different body type from those guys, and he's not going to be sort of bursting through bodies and breaking tackles. He's winning with his quickness and his speed. But he reminds me of like a point guard basketball. Like he makes someone's feet stop and then he goes the other way and makes them fall on the floor. And that's how he's going to win. And that's how he's going to take it to the house is by making defenders like second guess themselves and he'll sort of juke pass angles and stuff like that. So yeah, he's so fun to watch. I love him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, let's get into one more here before we time out. Jordan Addison out of USC. He's 21 years old. Came in at 5'11", 173 pounds. So on the smaller size, some good height, but not the best weight. Not that good of an RAS score. He had a 5.92, which is a little bit above average, but it's 0 to 10, just so when I'm giving out these scores. So about a 6, so 6 out of 10 essentially in terms of athleticism, which is height, explosiveness, agility, and top end speed. You're in a 4.49 40. Now, statistically, he probably has the best in the class, maybe other than Josh Downs, but in 2022, he had 59 catches for 875 yards and 8 touchdowns. That was with USC. And then last year, 2021 with Pitt, he had 100 catches for 1,593 yards and 17 touchdowns. So almost 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, I actually think that like this guy has the potential to possibly be the best out of this class, in my mind. He does everything pretty well. My biggest concern with him, though, is because he's so small. Is he going to be able to put on weight and still play the way he is playing, Also, he's got Caleb Williams throwing to him, so that's a benefit for him, possibly why his stats are where they are. So, yeah, I mean, he does everything else, like he does everything well. So I think he could move up to be the best or one of the best, but he also could. He's boomer bust too, so you put on 10 more pounds, you might lose some speed. So and Russ,
I think he's been super productive, like ever since he went into college, like right from the start. So from a young age, and that normally sort of trends towards being a good good NFL player if you sort of a man amongst boys at a very young age. But he's a really good route runner, and he sort of plays fast on tape, but on tape as if I watched loads of tape. But he plays fast on tape, but at the combine he's sort of disappointed a bit. And I think everyone was expecting him to run a bit faster, especially at the size he was. So I think that's maybe a little bit of a knock. I'm not sure if he'll maybe fall down a bit, or if people are just going to trust his production and what they've seen on the tape, or if they're going to say, like, if you're at that size, you need to be 4.3 speed or high 4.4s. Um, I sort of watched him again after the combine when I saw the weigh-in. I wondered if like his strength was like an issue, and I think it's going to sort of make sure he's only a slot receiver at the next level. And I'm not sure if he can play outside. I'm sure he'll prove me wrong, but I think he's mainly a slot receiver, and he can use his sort of he's a bit of a technician as a route runner, and he can still sort of operate deep, and he's quite strong at the catch point as well at times. But I think if he was playing press on the outside, then he'd get rerouted and he wouldn't be as effective. So that's my concern. I'm sure the NFL had the same concern, and I think that's why he's maybe not. When he was seeing him at Pitt and we just seen all the numbers he was putting up, he's maybe not as sort of can't miss prospect as we maybe once thought.
Yeah, and the way I see him is, and he's a lot like Josh Downs in my mind, because those are guys who are both like pretty good at everything, but they're not elite at like one specific thing. And for Jordan Addison, the one thing that I would say is borderline elite is just his playmaking ability, because he has a lot of yards after catch. He's really shifty, a lot like JSN. He just makes people miss. He has a really developed route tree. He's good on screens. He's got good hands. He's not the biggest guy, but he has good enough body control to separate and just make, some good contested catches. He's got, great route runner, good release, fast feet to create that separation, and decent enough speed, not the fastest, but not the slowest either. The things that concern me about him are he has made a lot of concentration drops. It's not just straight hitting him in the hands. He will try and catch it, and then he'll just turn and, he won't have the ball secured. And so it just goes down as a drop. So he's got to, be coached up, make sure that he secures that ball before he starts making a move. Like I said, I mean, he's a decent athlete. He just doesn't have the best size for the NFL. I'd say Jaxon Smith-Njigba definitely has some potential to play outside, but I just don't see it with Jordan Addison. I think he's mainly a slot guy. He's played great, these past 2 years with Pitt and with USC, but those are both NFL caliber quarterbacks that are throwing him the ball. So you expect that kind of production. It's not a knock, but if he doesn't go to the best situation, then you could see some fall off. He's not going to make or break your team. He needs a good quarterback to kind of feed him so that he can, do what he does best. And that's, make plays. So I kind of comp him to Devonta Smith in a way, a little bit of a diet Devonta Smith, because they both had that production. They weren't the biggest guys, but they're just savvy football players. And I think he's going to be solid in the NFL. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see like one elite thing that is going to, put him on a level with like a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson. When I do see that with Jaxon Smith-Njigba and a Quentin Johnston, I see him maybe like as a career-long wide receiver too, which is good value to have in fantasy. I just don't think he's going to be, super elite for a long time, maybe a season or two here and there.
Yeah, I think he's best sort of. I think when I watch him, I'll see a bit of Calvin Ridley. So I think that's his sort of best projection to the NFL, like his best case scenario. It's maybe a Calvin Ridley type.
Yeah. Hopefully he just doesn't have FanDuel or DraftKings on his phone, and then it'll be even better. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back into it, we'll have our other 2 wide receivers to talk about. We will be back soon. Okay, welcome back. We just talked about the top 3, Jordan Addison, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and Quentin Johnston. We've got 2 more guys to discuss, and we'll start with Jalin Hyatt out of Tennessee. He's 21 years old, a junior coming out, measured in at 6 feet, 0 inches, 176 pounds. This guy is an athlete. His RAS score was 9.46. He ran a 4.4 40-yard dash, which, to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed with because I heard rumors that he would be running like a high 4.2, like low 4.3. So seeing a 4.4, we'll see if he can get that down a little bit at his pro day coming up here. But in 2022, he had 67 catches for 1,267 yards and 15 touchdowns. Hell of a season last year, no denying that. But in 2021, only 21 catches for 226 yards and 2 touchdowns. So definitely a big jump in stats in terms of 2021 to 2022. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but 2020 was pretty much the same as 2021. What do you guys think about Jalin Hyatt? I know that there's a lot of talk of him maybe hopping into the first round. What do you think?
I don't like that. I don't like that first round talk whatsoever. If you're talking about
NFL draft, not fantasy.
Yeah,
just for
yeah,
context.
NFL draft, yeah. Well, fantasy either, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. But yeah, he's blazing fast, blazing fast. I'm not that worried about the 4.4. I was a bit disappointed. I wanted to see the spectacle of someone running a 4.2, but we didn't quite get that at the combine. But when you watch him, he runs so fast. It's never in doubt for me. I never questioned it whatsoever. So that's not a concern for me. He's concerning as he's sort of like a one-trick pony. He's a vertical field stretcher, and he uses that speed to eat up the cushion on the defender and just blow right past them. He's quite a natural catcher when he's in space, but my concern is he only ever catches in space. He's sort of like in a system in Tennessee where he was wide open, and they sort of generated free releases for him as well, sort of stacking the receivers and then working out the slot as well. So he's never really been challenged, sort of in press man as much, or sort of in a contested catch situation. I think in the college, people were scared to press against them because they would just beat them with the speed. But in the NFL, you've got guys who can sort of match the speed somewhat and be physical at the line of scrimmage. So I'm anxious to see how he does there. He doesn't really have sort of the lateral quickness as well that I like. So if you're talking about a first round receiver who's going to be a role player at the next level, then that's really not for me.
Tyler, before you get into it, what are you doing with your hands?
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Ricky Bobby?
yeah.
You know we're posting the video, right?
Ross keeps saying everything that I was gonna say,
I'm
so
sorry.
like play with my hands. Um, yeah, exactly. He's a one-trick pony. He's just a deep threat. He doesn't run routes. He's not going to be an underneath guy or anything like that. I kind of comped him to like a Deshaun Jackson.
Same.
But even Robbie Anderson, you know, the only thing I got in my notes here is that I don't think he's gonna try to like nut in a cop's wife's eye. So he doesn't have that going for him like Robbie does.
He
But
might.
I mean, everything Ross said is right on point. So yeah, unless he can like add to his repertoire, like yeah, that's all he's got is
Yeah.
like
NFL.
every highlight you watch is just a deep ball, deep ball, deep ball. It's like, does this guy do anything else? So
Yeah, when NFL teams interview him, they should bring in a cop's wife and leave him alone for like an hour just to see if he'll nut in her eye. You know, that'd be a good test if they should draft him or
just
not.
get a cop to pull him over on the way to the thing
Yeah.
just to see how he reacts.
He comes in an interview. Well, sorry, Jalen, but you nutted in her eye. We're not going to be able to draft you. This interview's over.
That guy will
No.
never live that down.
No. You see, he changed his name to like Chosen Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get him off my roster.
Yep. Well, obviously, you guys talked about it. Like, speed is his one elite quality. And, you know, running the 4.4, it's not even quite elite. Like, before the combine, I had him as a guy like in PPR leagues, non-super flex, I had him like bottom end of the first round where some of those tier 2 running backs start to go. But now I'm not quite so sure. I mean, I think that, you know, his tape, it does show that he plays a lot faster in the game than he showed just by running that 40-yard dash. And he does have the ability to kind of turn it on and turn it off, you know, maybe go like 70% to start and then just turn the jets on and burn some guys. You know, his deep ball game is impressive. He tracks the ball really well. He sets a good pace to kind of time it out just as the ball is coming in so that he can make a catch in stride. But Ross, you mentioned really bad in press man coverage. He only had one recorded catch versus press in 2022. And there's a lot of teams that love that press man coverage with a safety help over top. So I could see him struggling with physical defensive backs. Tennessee even moved him into the slot just to avoid press man coverage. Even they saw that flaw in his game. And coming in at 176 pounds, obviously he's not like a DK Metcalf by any means. He's going to have a hard time handling some of the more physical defensive backs in the NFL. He's only got one season of true production. And the scariest thing about Jalen Hyatt for me is his limited route tree, because he pretty much only just, you know, ran those fly routes down the field. That's all he really did. And I'm not saying that guys who only rely on speed can't turn out to be a value on a fantasy team or an NFL team. Because look at like a Deshaun Jackson. You know, he might be like boom or bust, but he could also be the wide receiver one any given week. But then there's also the John Rosses of the NFL who just don't do anything. And that was one of the scarier things that I had about Jameson Williams. But even he had like a way more developed route tree. You know, he was physical, which is why I felt comfortable taking him like right with the top wide receivers in the class. But with Jalen Hyatt, you don't see that physicality. You don't see that developed route tree. So I don't know how he's going to translate into the NFL, and I'm officially scared of Jalen Hyatt.
It's probably going to end up being a punt return, kickoff returner, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good role for an NFL team, but for fantasy, I mean, you're not going to get much. Maybe one touchdown if you even play in a league that has punt or kickoff return touchdowns. So yeah, NFL wise, I could see him being a good asset to a team, but fantasy wise, he's as boom as a bust as it comes. I mean, even more so than Quentin Johnson. I mean, he could be like a John Ross. He could also be like a Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know if he did play special teams at Tennessee, but I don't know if, again, I go back to his lateral quickness. Like some guys who are fast can work underneath as well. But like I said, he's only like a go route guy. It's like watching a sort of when you watch the Tennessee offense, like playing Madden. It's just everything's like four verts. You just like throw it as far as you can. But yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. And I think, like you say, he might have more value to an NFL team than he does for our liking as a fantasy. So I'm sure he'll go in the first round. And if personally, if the Jets selected a receiver in the first round and he was only going to run one route, then I wouldn't be happy. But I'm sure some teams say we need speed. He's going to give us that, so we'll take him.
Well, the thing about him is he actually did have a crazy good like agility score too. Well, actually, correction, he did not do like the 3-cone or the shuttle, but he's a good jumper, which shows his explosion. Like he had a 40-inch vertical and he had an 11-foot 3-inch broad jump. But I do want to kind of see that agility testing because that is pretty indicative on, I guess, route running ability and being able to make those cuts on like an in or out route or a hitch or a comeback or whatever else, like a quick slant or something. It just kind of shows like how fast you come out of those breaks. So we don't have those numbers right now, but as it sits, I mean, he had one of the best RAS scores out of anybody at the combine. So, but again, the RAS scores isn't indicative of everything. And I think that that limited route is the one thing that really scares the hell out of me when it comes to Jalen Hyatt. So anything else to say about him, or can we move on to the last one for the day?
Move on.
All right. We're going to be talking Josh Downs to cap it off. Coming out of North Carolina. He's 21 years old, a junior coming out. He measured in at 5'9" at the combine, 171 pounds. Pretty good athlete. RAS score was 7.82. He ran a 4.48 40-yard dash. Last year, 2022, he had 94 catches for 1,029 yards and 11 touchdowns. In 2021, with Sam Howell, he had 101 catches for 1,335 yards and 8 touchdowns. So that's some impressive college stats. That's some good production there.
That's my quarterback.
Yeah, Drake May and Sam Howell right there. Kind of a similar situation as Jordan Addison. Very similar.
Yeah, I like this guy. I look at him. I look at the size, though. That's scary, but he's a little bigger than Tavon Austin, and he's a little smaller than Manny Sanders. But he's the guy that I could see being Manny Sanders, and I like him. I think he had a great year with Sam Howell, but he still put up a good year last year too. So he's probably destined to be a slot receiver, right? So he great route runner, and he's got all the goods. So, but he's my closest comp to Manny Sanders that I like. So. And you asked what I was doing with my hands. I can't feel my hands right now, so I'm trying to get some feeling back in them.
Well, if you put them up, there's going to be less blood, so you got to put them down to get the feeling back.
Yeah, but when I put them up, they stop tingling.
Oh, okay. So you do you, Tyler.
It's a carpal tunnel thing. I got to do these exercises. It's a whole thing. Anyway, go on, Ross.
Talking about great hands, Josh Downs has got great hands. I don't know if that's a good segue or not, but yeah, I think he's a really polished receiver. I think he's going to come in and perform well for a team like Tyler said. He's going to be in the slot only just because of his size, and I think he's going to sort of perform well from day one, wherever he lands. Like he plays really fast. He does everything fast. His breaks are really fast, and he creates separation really easily. But at the same time, like he's got strong hands, and he plays above his size. So he is small and short, but he is a bit physical at the catch point, and he does have a little bit of toughness in him as well. It's what I really like, especially if someone's working across the middle of the field. That's what you want. You want that toughness. And I think he's going to perform at a high level, but I think his ceiling's a bit capped with his sort of his frame, his size, and his athleticism. I don't think he's got the sort of elite movement. So I think it was a 4.48 40. You'd expect that to be like a 4.3 if you're going to be sort of truly elite and have like a higher ceiling. But overall, really polished, really sort of reliable for a quarterback. And that was Drake May coming in, starting his first season and really sort of honed in on him. And he almost had like 100 catches in back-to-back seasons. So yeah, really excited to see him at the next level.
Yep. Yeah, I think him and Jordan Addison are very similar. I mean, they both had two good quarterbacks and they have the stats to back it up. And they're both really good at everything, but they aren't elite at one thing, really. And I give the nod slightly to Jordan Addison just because he does have a little bit better like run after catch ability, I think, than Josh Downs, in my opinion. But I think Josh Downs could be a PPR lord. I mean, there's no reason why he can't get like 90 catches every single year. But like you said, Ross, I think that he does have a little bit of a cap there just because of his size. He's decent in contested catch situations, I guess, but he's not going to be like a red zone target. I could see him with like 90 catches for 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns on a season, which is great. I think that he could be a wide receiver too. I think realistically, like a consistent wide receiver 2 or 3 is what he's going to be his entire career. But I just don't see him being that much of a difference maker like how an Amon-Ra St. Brown has, because Amon-Ra St. Brown is very physical. He's a great blocker, which is good for NFL teams. Who cares for fantasy? But it helps you get on the field more. But with that physicality, he's going to struggle against some of those physical corners, just like how a Jalen Hyatt is. If they jam him at the line, he's pretty much irrelevant on a play, and that's just one target less for him. So that's something that he's got to overcome. But decent speed. He was obviously targeted in the red zone, like 11 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns in the past 2 years. So he knows how to get open. He's got a good route tree. He has good yards after catch, but it's just the size is kind of the one hang up. I think he's going to be that slot kind of wide receiver. Not a lot of potential as an X or on the outside, even like as a flanker. But that physicality, it's going to be the one thing he struggles with. He's really decent at just about everything, but he doesn't have an elite trait in just one specific thing like you have from some of these other guys in the class.
See that? So that's where I disagree, is because I think his quickness and his route running are going to make him better in the red zone. He will be able to, those crossing patterns, stuff like that. Within 5 yards, probably, kind of deal, where a quick slant or something, and then he finds his way in, kind of deal. But I could see him getting more than 4 touchdowns a year for sure.
I agree. I mean, he
is a really, like, you're right. He's more destined for number 2, like Manny Sanders. So
no,
he does get open
that's
very
valuable.
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
He gets
And
open
I'm
very
not
quickly
saying
and creates separation. Sorry, on you go, Cobb. On you go.
Well, I mean, I know that he can come down with catches in the red zone, but he's not going to be the number one option. Like look at Julian Edelman's seasons. A lot of yards, a lot of receptions. He moved the chains, but he's not catching 10, 15 touchdowns a game. I mean, don't quote me on that because I don't know how many touchdowns he had, but
10, 15 touchdowns a game, that's a lot.
Well, in a season, rather, I mean. But those slot guys, they typically aren't coming down with a boatload of touchdowns. They're more like moving the chains, and which is super valuable on an NFL team and for fantasy. But it's one thing that can just kind of cap off his potential. That's all I'm trying to say. But back to you, Ross.
Just gonna Google it real quick, okay?
7 touchdowns was Edelman's best season. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
He reminds me of Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder, like you said, you won't really say he's got any elite traits. His elite traits probably his quickness, sort of in and out of breaks, in and out of routes. And I feel very similar about Josh Downs as I did Crowder. He's a safe pair of hands, and he's going to be good at the next level. Like you said, maybe not going to break all the records, but good NFL receiver, and you need at least 3 receivers on a team, and he's going to be starting every week for an NFL team really quickly, I think.
All right. Well, let's rank some of these guys. We'll go Ross first, then Tyler, and then I'll finish it off, and then we'll each give our sleeper. What do you got these rankings as, Ross?
Are we talking fantasy? Are we talking NFL draft? What are you
We're
saying?
talking
What are we doing?
fantasy. What the people want to know.
So JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, number one with a bullet. Then a tier break. We'll say there's a tier break there. Then I'll go Quentin Johnston, then Jordan Addison, then Josh Downs, and then Jalen Hyatt for me.
Okay. Tyler, any disagreements there?
I got the same order. It goes in Jigba, Johnson, Addison, Downs, Hyatt.
I am following suit with Jackson Smith and Jigba 1, Quentin Johnson 2, Jordan Addison 3, Josh Downs 4, and Jalen Hyatt 5. And there's some other guys who are intriguing in this class that I wouldn't be surprised if you put over Josh Downs. Like Zay Flowers is a guy that we wanted to talk about, but for time's sake, we left him out. You know, there's some other like Rashee Rice. I haven't really looked into him too much, but he's a guy who's kind of on the radar. But what do you guys think for sleepers? Is there anybody in mind, maybe like a day 3 kind of guy that has caught your eye?
Countless day 3 guys. I can go on for hours, but I'll bring up one. I'll bring up Puka Nakua. So he's a wide receiver out of BYU.
Who is it?
Puka Nakua.
I'm gonna type in BYU receiver.
Cua.
Okay. With the accent and the name, it just threw me for a loop. That combination screwed me up. I see him now.
So he's a bigger receiver. So when I'm thinking of sleepers, I'm thinking of what does the class not have? And we've talked a lot about short guys who are going to work in the slot. Nakua's a bit bigger and he's really physical. He is sort of like does have a little bit of quickness in his feet, despite being sort of like a bigger physical guy. He can stretch the field vertically, and the thing I love about him is his ball skills. His body control is unbelievable, and he's toe tapping catches at the boundary as well. Like even at the college level, he's getting both feet down at the sideline, and he's got natural hands. And the key thing I love about wide receivers is do they look fluid when they catch the ball? Was it like a natural? Is it a fluid transition? And he's got that. He was sort of did have a lot of injuries, or like not as big production, and that's why he's maybe not talked about, and that's why he's a day 3 prospect. But I really like him and really hope he lands somewhere good and can break out as a better NFL receiver than a college receiver.
Okay. I like that. He was not on my radar at all, actually. So I'm gonna have to
What
look
was
into
his
him
name?
a little bit more. Pikau McCool. Just
Puka
type in
Nakua.
BYU wide receiver.
BYU wide
It's a
receiver.
little bit easier there. What about you, Tyler? Got any sleepers? A real one this time, other than just trying to throw everyone for a loop?
What? You didn't like Badgett? Okay. I like this guy. He was the darling at the combine. But in highlights, like they're spelling his name, like saying his name weird, like it almost sounds like they're saying with a J. But Andre Losavas from Princeton.
Chivas. Oh, I love it, Tyler.
Yeah. That guy, 6'3", 205 pounds. He's got the size. He ran a 4.43. He's got a 39-inch vertical, but he says he predicts that he will jump over 40 at his pro day, which is March 21st for anybody keeping track. He goes up, gets the ball, and he does everything right. Great route runner. He's got speed. He can pretty much do it all on the field. The only thing that I worry about is, does he look so good in highlights because of the competition he's against, right? Being in the Ivy League and all, but he's smart guy. He's kind of like a poor man's Justin Jefferson, maybe the Ivy League Justin Jefferson. But that's yeah. Oh yeah, and he ran 4.12 in the 20-yard shuffle. So that's my guy. Don't take him.
I love it, Tyler. I was thinking about saying him as well, so I'm glad someone mentioned him. But he's my favourite thing about him is he's a track star as well. He done the heptathlon and the decathlon, and you really see sort of the body control of like the the pole vault and the high jump, and when he catches the ball, like it's great to watch.
I was listening to he was on an interview, and they were talking to him. They said, why did, like, because he could have went forget the school, but he had offers to other schools that were out of the Ivy League, and he turned them down to go to Princeton because he said his dad was extremely strict and wanted him to make sure that he got an education, like a real education, while he was, so just knowing that he grew up like with a dad like that kind of, a lot of times that can make a guy like St. Brown, his dad pushed him his whole life, right? To be better no matter what. So I kind of feel like he could be like that because he's been pushed so much. So
So
that's
two Hawaiians we've picked. What's your Hawaiian, Corbin? You got a Hawaiian receiver to talk about?
A Hawaiian one?
Yeah. Puka Nacua and Andre Yeshiva's both Hawaiian.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of him. No, I was looking into some of the stats of the guy that I'm gonna take here. One guy that's kind of came up on my radar just from the Senior Bowl and the Combine even more so, like Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. He's coming out after a killer combine with one of the best RAS scores that we've seen in the entire class, a 9.93, which is damn near perfect. He's 6'1", 220 pounds, so he's a bigger guy. He ran a 4.46 40, so he's got size and speed to boot. Good agility skills, acceleration, explosiveness, everything like that. The one knock on him is his injury concerns. I think he broke his foot back in college. But I kind of look at him almost as like a Deebo Samuel, like a guy who you can put in at running back and receiver. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he is going to be prolific with the yards after the catch. And I think that teams are going to be looking at Deebo and see like some kind of way to replicate it. Ole Miss has had pretty good receivers coming out the past few years with DK and with Elijah Moore. So, I mean, they've almost been wide receiver U in some ways, other than like Ohio State and Alabama. Those two definitely for sure. But Ole Miss is right up there with them. So he's definitely an intriguing guy. I'm just worried that because he does have some like concentration drops too, that he is more of like a running back and playing a wide receiver position. So, but I mean, if you're taking a guy day 3, you're pretty much just looking for elite traits, and he has elite athleticism and he has power to boot. So, I mean, if you're taking a shot, why not take a shot on a guy who could potentially be a wide receiver 1 with a little bit of refinement?
I like he's a thick receiver.
Yeah, a
He
thick
plays
boy
like
for
it, so,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. We need the next Deebo. After I traded him away, I'm kicking myself over that, so I'm trying to get the second coming here. Hopefully catch some lightning in the bottle. But you guys got anybody else to talk about, or huh?
You need better QBs, so that's one thing.
Yeah, that's true. But probably not going to get it through you. The way the offers you're sending me for Goff. I'll have to resort to somebody else.
Did you hear my story? You want
No.
to hear my story?
Yeah, I'd love to.
I got called dirty hot yesterday.
Dirty hot. That's exactly
Yeah.
how I would describe you, actually. That makes sense.
I went to a house because of a leaking toilet, and I had to take the toilet off and put a new wax seal in. That was all. But there's 2 young 20-something-year-old girls living there, and then the landlady was probably about 30. All 3 were very attractive. And then I was all dirty in my work clothes, and when I went to leave, the door caught the rug, and they thought I had closed the door already, but I hadn't. And I heard the one girl go, "Now that's what you call dirty hot." And I was just
Should have came
like,
back in. It sounds like it's like a straight up setup for a porno, man.
no,
I thought I've seen that film before. Yeah.
but but then I reached back to close the door and move the obstacle that was keeping it open, and the other girl goes, "He's got crazy good, nice eyes," and then they heard me move the obstacle that was in the way, and I started closing it, and I heard, "Oh my God." Because I
Oh,
realized
Tyler.
I heard it all.
So now you're really feeling yourself, huh?
Yeah. So
Bet you ran home and told your wife, and you're like, guess what? I
did.
saw today, babe.
I
Dirty
did. She
hot.
wasn't
What do you
happy.
think of
No,
that? No, I bet
she wasn't
not.
happy about that story at all.
You're sending someone else in the next time they call. I would have just like
Yeah.
cracked a pipe or something, so you got to go back the next day.
Yeah, the landlady was like, you guys service all my houses. I was like, oh, good, maybe I'll see you again.
I'll tell you
And-
something else I can service.
Oh, come on now. I'm a married man.
I know, but I just dream for you, you know. It's a fantasy. But with that, I think it's a good spot to end it, guys. Thanks again for listening to episode 2. We'll be back out next week with a little less intriguing a position, but a necessary one to go over nonetheless. So stick around, stay tuned, and we will be back for roster wars, going through all these positions up until the draft. Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye, guys.
I see it.